Welcome in, everybody. Hope you're having a great Labor Day. I'm John Bachman in for Greta Van Susteren, and this is The Record. President Trump is cracking down on voter identification in the U.S. The president posting on Truth Social, quote, "Voter ID must be part of every single vote. No exceptions. I will be doing an executive order to that end." 3 exclamation points. Also, no mail-in voting except for those that are very ill and the very far away military. Use paper ballots only, end quote. President Trump is not the only one signing executive orders. This weekend, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order of his own.
We have received credible reports that we have days, not weeks, before our city sees some type of militarized activity by the federal government. It is unclear at this time what that will look like exactly. I'm signing an executive order today that will launch the Protecting Chicago initiative. This sweeping executive order directs our Department of Law to pursue any and every legal mechanism to hold this administration accountable for violating the rights of Chicagoans. This order affirms that the Chicago Police Department will not collaborate with military personnel on police patrols or civil immigration enforcement. Yeah, and I don't take orders from the federal government. Thank you all very much.
Well, meanwhile, Democratic congressional leaders are warning of a partial government shutdown on Thursday. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries sent a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and that letter says, in part, quote, "The September 30th funding deadline will be upon us shortly. It is therefore imperative that we immediately meet upon our return to Congress next week to discuss the need to avert a painful, unnecessary lapse in government funding to address the health care crisis Republicans have triggered in America," end quote. Let's bring in senior political analyst and former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, also with us, former Trump campaign national press secretary and former White House principal deputy press secretary Hogan Gidley. Gentlemen, happy Labor Day.
Same to you, John.
All right, Senator, let's begin with you. I want to get your reaction to President Trump cracking down on voter registration and voter ID here in the U.S. Give us your thoughts.
I certainly support the effort to make voter ID mandatory. I just don't see how the president has the authority to do that. I mean, there are things that I think are questionable that I'm glad that the president brought up and has pushed forward by executive order. I just don't see any constitutional authority has to do this. This is clearly within the purview of the states, and if there's any purview at the federal level, it's the Congress has to pass a law. And again, there's limitations as to what Congress can do when it comes to governing elections. Elections are governed at the state level. That's the way this country has always been devised, and I think it's important to do so. One of the things I push back very hard is any kind of federalization of election laws. So I just look, I give the president credit for highlighting the issue. It's a popular issue among all voters, certainly Republican voters, but even Democratic voters believe that people should have the right, have to have a voter ID. It is simply not within his purview to do so.
Hogan, don't you think this is President Trump's way of sending out that call to all the Republican state legislators and state senators in America that they've got to do everything that he wants to see them do to make this happen on the state level? Maybe that's what's in this executive order. We don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, we don't know, but I do think this is highlighting a very important issue. And Rick just pointed out something very smart, which is a majority of people support this. Polling that we did at the America First Policy Institute showed 85% of the American people wanted photo identification requirements before voting, not voter identification, literal photographs to prove you are who you say you are when you cast a ballot. It is another return to common sense that Donald Trump is highlighting, whether it's closing the border, whether it's stopping wars all over the world, reduction in crime, no men and women sports. This is common sense that people need to understand. And however this manifests itself and whether the legality is there or not, that will obviously be for the courts to decide. Highlighting this issue is very important because no bully pulpit is bigger than that of the White House. And when Donald Trump says you need to put voter identification laws in place, we can do it from the federal level. Whether you can or can't, that's a conversation we need to have because it does expose the left for pushing to allow anyone to vote anytime, anywhere, for any reason, without any identification.
Sure. Let's stick with you on this one, Hogan. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson seems to be doing whatever he can to stop President Trump from deploying the National Guard to his city. But our question is why. And earlier today, the president posted on Truth Social that D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has become, quote, very popular because she worked with the president on bringing crime down in the city. Why can't Brandon Johnson do the same thing, Hogan?
Because it's coming from Donald Trump. Listen, he would just as soon be on the wrong side of this issue than support anything Donald Trump would say or would do. Donald Trump, again, has forced Democrats to be on the side not of those who have suffered at the hands of criminals, but to be on the side of criminals. This guy is chief among them. There is a reason his popularity is so low in the single digits in the city, because he is standing up for ridiculous policies like this that allow criminals to control the streets. The American people want safety. They want security. They sure want sanity from their government officials. This guy is an example of doing things the wrong way, completely insane and irrational.
Well, Senator, let's talk about that potential government shutdown, if you can even call it that. Do you think the Democrats' warning to House Speaker Johnson and Senate Minority Leader John Thune is justified? And do you think we are headed for some sort of partial government shutdown at the end of the month?
It's certainly possible. The Democrats are not. The Democrats are needed to pass this continuing resolution. You can't pass it with simply Republican votes. So that means Democrats are going to want some sort of payoff for their vote. And the question is whether Republicans are willing to strike a deal and in making that happen or not. And when I say that, not in the House, but in the Senate. The Senate, you have to have 60 votes. In the House, they can pass it with a simple majority. But you know, it's going to be tough. I mean, Chuck Schumer last time capitulated, if you will, and went along with a continuing resolution, or with a stopping of the government shutdown. And he played very dearly for it. I mean, the Democratic base really blew up in his face. I doubt he'll do that again, which means there's going to have to be some negotiated settlement here, which is not going to play well probably with either party. That's the way these things work.
Yeah, Hogan, how do you see this playing out? I mean, when you threaten these government shutdowns, that's all you can basically do, right, when you're Democrats and you don't hold the reins of power in any branch of government.
Right, and Rick is correct here. Chuck Schumer did take it on the chin last time. He's not going to do that again. And remember, the Democrat mantra so far has been, people don't fight enough. Now we have to get into the fight. So they're going to be looking to their leader, Chuck Schumer, in the U.S. Senate to fight against whatever the Republicans do, albeit smart, common sense, whatever. He's going to have to fight against it just out of principle to stand up and try and get some support from his base on the Democrat side. It's going to be a very interesting set of negotiations moving into the Senate side. I imagine the House is going to pass it out, as Rick said, along party lines. The Senate's a different animal. I'm going to be very interested to see what they are going to try and do from the Democrat side to get this thing through, and whether Republicans or not will agree with it or not remains to be seen. But Democrats are in a spot here because they're going to have to show some fight. But the problem is they're fighting for all the wrong issues. So if they can fight for common sense and stand with Republicans on some of these things, maybe it gets through. We'll see. But they're in a tricky spot.
That's a big if. And also, we will say this, Chuck Schumer, something else he learned is to not be around a grill this Labor Day weekend. No pictures of Chuck Schumer working the grill. That was a huge faux pas last time. Gentlemen, great to have you both here. Hogan Gidley, Senator Santorum, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, John.
Well, on Saturday, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani was injured in a car accident in New Hampshire. Giuliani's head of security, Michael Ragusa, said that Giuliani's vehicle was struck from behind at a high speed. The former mayor was transported to a nearby trauma center where he was diagnosed with a fractured thoracic vertebrae, multiple lacerations and contusions, as well as injuries to his left arm and lower leg. Ragusa says the former mayor now is in great spirits, fully alert and conscious, and today, President Trump posted this on Truth Social, quote, "I am pleased to announce that Rudy Giuliani, the greatest mayor in the history of New York City and an equally great American patriot, will receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, our country's highest civilian honor. Details as to a time and place will follow." So some more good news there for the recovering mayor. Coming up, towns reduced to rubble in Afghanistan, what the Taliban-run country is saying after a powerful earthquake. That when the record continues. Welcome back. Today, a mass funeral was held in Yemen. Hundreds mourned the death of the Houthi Prime Minister Ahmed al-Rawawi. He was killed last week in an Israeli airstrike. The Houthis, which are backed by Iran, now vowing revenge. Today, the IDF confirmed a Yemeni drone was intercepted outside of Israeli territory. The Houthis also launched a missile at an oil tanker at the Red Sea, claiming it had ties to Israel, although the ship suffered zero damage. Meanwhile, Israel is continuing its offensive in Gaza. More tanks were seen entering Gaza City, which Israel says is Hamas's last stronghold. Yesterday, the IDF confirmed the head spokesperson was killed in an aerial attack. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, on X posted this, quote, Hamas terror spokesperson Abu Obeida was eliminated in Gaza and sent to meet the all-time liquidated members of the Axis as evil from Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen, all at the bottom of hell. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders is in Tel Aviv with the latest on the Gaza takeover and what comes next.
From Tel Aviv tonight, Israeli media reports claim last night's security cabinet meeting was explosive, with no vote on the president's ceasefire deal, with the IDF chief reportedly at odds with political leaders over Gaza City takeover plans. And he allegedly echoed the public's urging to accept the president's ceasefire deal. Now, we stress this comes from anonymous leaks and can't be verified. That's been the story of the security cabinet here in Israel throughout the entire war when it comes to reporting on the decisions made behind those closed doors. But because the news from this meeting dominates the headlines here in Israel, it is relevant. On the military front, Prime Minister Netanyahu reports Israeli forces have targeted the Hamas spokesperson on Saturday, with Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz stating yesterday that they have confirmed Abu Obeida was killed. Obeida began giving press statements back in 2002 and has been the long-standing spokesperson for Hamas. He has only appeared on video covering his face. Obeida had issued what appears to be his final statement last Friday. There has been no comment from Hamas following this news. And in Yemen today, thousands attend the funerals for 12 senior Houthi figures killed by Israeli strikes last Thursday. The crowd chanting, God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam. The majority of the Houthi leadership, including their prime minister Ahmed al-Rawawi, were killed in the strikes. Mohammed Miftah is now reportedly leading the Iran-backed terror proxy. Houthi forces have since reportedly resumed attacks on shipping vessels in the Red Sea and raided an office of the United Nations in Yemen. And once again, another flotilla of small vessels are attempting to break the Israeli naval blockade around Gaza, this time setting off from Barcelona, Spain, and once again with activist Greta Thunberg reportedly on board. The vessels that left yesterday have reportedly already turned around and returned to port after organizers say a storm brought winds of up to 35 miles per hour. You remember back in June, Israeli ships intercepted the previous flotilla and detained and deported all on board. And also looming over every decision here, what happens to Gaza going forward, that post-war scenario? A report out of the Washington Post claims they've obtained a 38-page prospectus from the White House that details how the United States would administer the Gaza Strip for at least 10 years, relocating the Gazan population and rebuilding the area as a tourist resort and manufacturing center. This plan appears to largely align with the public statements that the president has made in recent months. From Tel Aviv tonight, Zach Anders, Newsmax.
All right, Zach, thank you. A scene of destruction in Afghanistan. A strong earthquake hit the eastern part of the country late yesterday, destroying villages. According to the Taliban-run government, at least 800 people were killed. More than 2,500 have been injured. Those numbers could go up as rescue crews and residents search through the rubble for survivors. The 6.0 magnitude earthquake was followed by several aftershocks. The tremor was also felt in parts of nearby Pakistan. Eastern Afghanistan is rural and mountainous, so some rescue efforts have been challenging. Some rescue helicopters have been able to land, but entire roads and communities have been cut off by landslides. Coming up, President Donald Trump takes aim at Democrat leaders for the crime-ridden cities. We'll talk about that when the record continues. Welcome back. The One Big Beautiful bill that President Trump signed into law this summer includes more funds for ICE. National correspondent Joe Mueller was with agents in Minnesota to see how they apprehend individuals.
I'm at 32nd and Cedar.
We're just going out. We have a couple of teams out in Minneapolis on a target location.
Before the sun lit up the Minnesota sky, St. Paul Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Sam Olson and a handful of agents hit the road.
We're going after a Mexican national with a DWI. All right, so there's our minivan.
For weeks, agents researched today's targets. They knew Joaquin Herrera Avila would be leaving his house early in the morning.
And we had to first figure out that he was here and then get that initial thing, and then it's going in to try to find, pattern of life. I think we had people even yesterday driving past to see if the vehicle was around.
A short time later, it was time for the next one in downtown Minneapolis. At first, we waited, but then our eyes were on the moving target.
See that gray Volkswagen that's passing us right now?
From all directions, agents followed and quickly pulled him over. Omar Abdi Jamal was arrested. We learned he is a known Somali activist in the area.
He's got some prior convictions for fraud for his entry into the U.S.
What went into this operation and finding this target?
A lot went into this one. This is somebody who stopped reporting to ICE, so of course he didn't want to be found. He was ordered to remove back in 2011.
By the afternoon, we were on to the third operation, this time in St. Paul.
This is an Afghani national.
And once agents saw the car moving, it was again time to move in.
We had, a lot planned today. We did put somebody down here to kind of see if he was still going to be here.
Olson says Kismat Din Zafran was convicted of sexual misconduct in the presence of a person under 16.
With a sexual offense with a minor present, is a priority for us, right? I would consider this one of the worst of the worst.
With more funds from the president's big, beautiful bill, the plan is to get more agents.
We can focus on ensuring that we are getting the worst of the worst out.
Despite the increasing assaults on agents and the lack of cooperation in sanctuary jurisdictions, Olson says their work continues.
We're going to have these same type of targets tomorrow and the same type of targets the next day, unfortunately.
Reporting in Minneapolis, I'm Joe Moeller.
All right, Joe, thank you. Well, today, President Trump took to Truth Social to praise Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and to slam other Democrats, saying in part, quote, "Wow, Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people to bring down crime in Washington, D.C. Virtually nothing in D.C. Her statements and actions were positive instead of others like Pritzker, Westmore, Newscomb, and the 5% approval rated mayor of Chicago, who spend all of their time trying to justify violent crime instead of working with us to completely eliminate it, which we have done now in Washington, D.C., now a crime-free zone. Wouldn't it be nice to say that about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and even the crime-drenched city of Baltimore?" End quote. National Police Association spokesperson and retired Chicago area police officer Sergeant Betsy Brancher-Smith joins us, as well as retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Chris Hinkle. Great to have you both here this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Betsy, first to you. I want to start with over the weekend, we saw at least 52 people were shot, 7 of which these were fatal shootings. How can Governor Pritzker and Brandon Johnson say there is not a massive crime issue in Chicago with numbers like this?
Well, they can't, but they're going to tell you crime is down. I think the record one Labor Day weekend was about 90 shootings. Here's the thing. This is one of the most gun-controlled cities in our nation, but our leadership there, Brandon Johnson and the governor, Governor Pritzker, all they want to talk about is Donald Trump. They're not giving any sort of rest to the citizens there who have to experience this kind of violent crime. We had a mass shooting in Chicago. We just had a beautiful 25-year-old girl killed a couple of days ago. And the Chicago Police Department is doing everything they can with their federal partners, but we could be doing so much more if the leaders would stop with this political nonsense and actually do something about crime.
Chris, officials in Chicago are bracing for a major federal immigration enforcement operation that could begin as soon as this week. We saw Brandon Johnson basically calling for an uprising today against any federal assistance in that city. How do you see this going?
I don't see it going well for Chicago. It actually plays well into Trump's hands, because if you take a look, and I hate to use this term, but according to the Insurrection Act, the president can come in and deploy the National Guard to quell unrest. And if it is where the locals are abusing civil rights of its citizens or impeding federal law enforcement agencies from conducting their mission. So the more that they push back against him, the more ammunition he has to go in and do the things that need to be done.
Betsy, on Sunday, Governor Pritzker said the potential major federal immigration enforcement operation would be, his word, an invasion. What do you make of this?
This is inflammatory language that does nothing but endanger law enforcement, local, state, and federal in the city of Chicago and beyond. You know, as your package stated, ICE agents are being increasingly attacked. And yet here we are, you have the mayor of the city of Chicago and the governor calling for people to rise up and fight federal agents. I think what's going to happen is ICE is going to be there. They're going to be on the ground. And if the Chicago Police Department and other federal agencies can't protect ICE, that leaves the door open for President Trump to activate the National Guard. And I think most residents of Chicago will welcome it.
Chris, don't you think, whether it's local law enforcement or with the FBI, a lot of the law enforcement officers who are actually out on the ground trying to fight crime welcome this type of help? They've seen what it's done in Washington, D.C. I would imagine, even though they probably can't say it publicly, they would welcome federal law enforcement to come in and help.
You always welcome more resources coming in to help you do your job. Even if you brought the National Guard in just to be a presence, sort of like a neighborhood watch, we found that neighborhood watches bring the crime rate down. It also frees up resources within the law enforcement community to address the crime problems they have there in Chicago. I think you're going to find the partnership between the federal, state, and local agencies attacking this problem, coupled with having the National Guard on the ground as witnesses, as a neighborhood watch. You've just seen how it worked in the District of Columbia. Now, the president doesn't have as much authority in Chicago. He can't come in and take over the police department, but he does control their resources. And this is vastly needed. And I think I think the biggest fear that most of these politicians have is that it will be effective and it will prove how they've been so wrong for so long.
Yeah, you have to imagine that Muriel Bowser actually got some feedback from her constituents, and that's why she changed her tune. Yesterday, President Trump posted this on Truth Social, quote, "This is the list I get every single day. The list includes the arrests made in D.C. for August 30th. It says 76 arrests were made during the reporting period. 5 firearms were seized. The list also includes significant activity that was reported in the area." The president says on August 30th, a, quote, "El Salvadoran national and member of the MS-13 designated terror organization was administratively arrested. Subject arrested for assault on a federal officer and threats to the president. A subject apprehended for sexual assault," end quote. I mean, again, Betsy, we see these reports. You see these reports. The president sees these reports every single day. How can anyone be against this?
Because it's pure politics. You've got to, what people don't, I think, really understand is that people like Brandon Johnson care more about their own careers and their own visibility and their own pocketbooks than they care about the people of the city of Chicago. We have had a street gang problem in Chicago for 50+ years. Brandon Johnson is one in a long line of mayors that really hasn't done anything about it. And if we could marshal up enough federal resources with federal prosecutors, we could get a real handle on that problem. And Chris is spot on when he talks about bringing in the National Guard just for visibility in these high crime areas. I think it could work and work well, but then Brandon Johnson's career is over.
You know, Chris, when you look at Brandon Johnson, he was basically installed in that office by the teachers' unions. And you wonder if he is the one actually making these decisions or if he's being forced to say these types of things, forced to try and push back against President Trump. Because, again, no common sense person would deny the help from the federal government given what Chicago is going through with violent crime.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the teachers union. They, like the politicians, are going to be exposed with this. And their concern is that with the elimination of the Department of Education, with solving a crime problem in a record amount of time and showing that it can be done in a record amount of time, that this is going to expose these politicians and this teachers union out there that doesn't have the best interest of the students at heart. They have their own best interest. The next thing that we need to focus on then is changing the culture in these areas so that the youth that we bring up, that they won't engage in these types of activities. But a good way to handle that for the future is to get the really bad guys off the street. And the partnerships with the federal, state, and local, they're a great way to do it. We did it here in Mississippi when I led the Safe Streets Violent Crimes Gang programs. It will work in Chicago. You just need to force it in.
You know, that's the key point, and that's what Washington, D.C. proves, that it can be done. It can be done in a relatively small amount of time as long as everyone gets on the same page and is committed to doing it. Betsy, Chris, great to have you both here with us this evening. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Coming up, two world leaders caught on camera, I should say, holding hands. We'll talk about that when the record continues. Well, Russia and India and China sure seem to be getting friendly. Earlier today, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived for day 2 of Chinese anti-NATO summit. And look how they showed up. The two world leaders were holding hands on their way to greet Chinese President Xi Jinping. And that's not all. After those meetings wrapped up, Indian Prime Minister Modi posted this picture on X with the caption, quote, "After the proceedings at the SCO summit venue, President Putin and I traveled together to the venue in our bilateral meeting. Conversations with him are always insightful," end quote. Meanwhile, President Trump is calling out India for its high tariffs. The president posting on X, quote, "What few people understand is that we do very little business with India, but they do a tremendous amount of business with us. In other words, they sell us massive amounts of goods, their biggest client, but we sell them very little. Until now, a totally one-sided relationship, and it has been for many decades. The reason is that India has charged us until now such high tariffs, the most of any country, that our businesses are unable to sell into India. It has been a totally one-sided disaster. Also, India buys most of its oil and military products from Russia, very little from the U.S. They have now offered to cut their tariffs to nothing, but it's getting late. They should have done so years ago. Just some simple facts for people to ponder," end quote. Well, yesterday, a federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting dozens of Guatemalan minors. The federal judge also demanded assurances that the minors would remain in shelters until a permanent ruling is made. The temporary restraining order comes after the National Immigration Law Center filed an emergency request, and it went into effect as the children were already being loaded onto the planes. So once it went into effect, the children were removed from the planes and then placed back in shelters. In her ruling, Judge Sparkle Suknanen of the U.S. District Court of the District of Columbia wrote in quote part, "I don't want there to be any ambiguity about what I am ordering. You cannot remove children while the case proceeds," end quote. The government's lawyers, Drew Ensign, responded saying, quote, "The United States government is trying to facilitate the return of these children to their parents or guardians from whom they have been separated," end quote. The lawyer representing the children disputed Ensign's argument, saying, quote, "Some of the children have not requested to return. They don't want to return." He also added that the law prevents children from being removed expeditiously from the United States until a judge has assessed the safety of their return. Many of the children still have cases pending. Former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Jay Towns, joins us. Jay, always great to see you. I mean, here again, we have a district judge stepping in here in the way of Trump's immigration policies. How do you see this playing out, and what are the next steps for the administration here?
Yeah, so at least for 14 days, these children will remain in the immigration camp awaiting their fate. We have to understand, John, and happy Labor Day to you, and all the viewers, our immigration laws are a mesh framework of statutory and constitutional, and in some cases, judicial regulations. And what we've seen from this complaint, this emergent complaint of trying to repatriate these children back to their families and to their home country, is that there's this assumption that all these unaccompanied minors are victims of human trafficking. Now, the main complaint by the plaintiffs is under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. If they were all trafficked victims, then I would say that the plaintiffs are correct. But they offer no proof of that. They're just unaccompanied minors in the United States. And here's the other thing. Here's the loophole in that mesh of laws I described. Parents pay to have their kids sent into the United States via caravan, whether the coyotes or the cartels or whatever. The kid is then entitled to a visa when they get here. Under our laws, which were reauthorized under Biden in 22 and Obama in 2013, any parent, any guardian, any sibling can come to be with that unaccompanied minor here in the United States legally and get a visa to do so. It's called a derivative T visa. And then all are here in the U.S. legally. They all can then file their asylum claims. This is the clever scheme. If you wonder why we had open borders and why we had all these hundreds of thousands of children brought in, this is why. That's what I'm surmising.
Yeah, you don't have the mass importation of children through the coyotes without this type of stuff. We'll talk more about that in a second. On Friday, Carlos Ramiro Martinez, Guatemala's Minister of Foreign Affairs, said his country had been coordinating with the United States and expected to receive more than 600 kids. He also said that the initiative began when DHS Secretary Kristi Noem visited Guatemala in July. So this has clearly been in the works for a while. When do you think the judge heard about this?
Oh, this judge didn't hear about it until that emergency relief was filed this weekend. And the DOJ has not responded yet. The putative class is only 10 minor children. And so my hope is that DOJ comes back with facts that the parents want them back, the government of Guatemala wants them back. And if you're not a trafficked individual, then you are not entitled a hearing. There can be an emergency removal of you from this country. They are illegal aliens. They don't belong here. They can't stay here. That's why the plaintiffs have cited the Convention Against Torture and the Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act, which is sort of the U.S. version of the Convention Against Torture. They're not facing torture in Guatemala. Some of them are 10 years old. They've not made a political stance such that they would face torture if they were to return. That's just a way of getting the attention of judges, making some salacious headlines when eventually all these children, 600 according to Guatemala, are going to be returned back to their homes.
Yeah, Judge Sparkle Sunanan was nominated to the bench by President Biden. You know, we didn't hear as vocal about the 230,000 kids that went missing under his administration. Right. Do you think her decision here has anything to do, or her appointment by Biden has anything to do with her temporary restraining order?
Sure. I mean, I think she's of the same belief that anybody that wants to come to this country should be able to stay here. It's just not our laws. It's not our society. It's not a legal norm. And so, but I do think there are a number of judges, and we've seen this borne out over the course of this administration in the last 8 months. The judges are going to go to every end of the earth, even defy Supreme Court rulings, to keep illegal immigrants in this country. And folks have to really start, on Capitol Hill especially, have to start asking why. And it's the holes in our law, the loopholes that were very cleverly crafted, that need to be filled by our Republican Congress, Senate, and indeed our President of the United States.
The order by the judge is temporary, but it is the second recent setback for the Trump administration. Just on Friday, a federal judge blocked the administration from carrying out its fast-track deportations of people detained far from the southern border. How much do these orders actually impact the administration's agenda, Jay?
Well, I mean, I think at this point they're anticipating losing every one of these temporary restraining order cases that are filed. They're anticipating litigation on just about everything that they do. They wake up and have coffee in the morning, they might get sued. So, but they are winning at every appellate level. You cannot come up with a case where this administration has lost at the appellate or Supreme Court level, because Article 2 powers are extraordinary. District court judges don't believe that. Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown does not believe that. The law is what they say it is. But that's not the law, and that's not the Constitution, and they're just fighting their fight. This is just lawfare by other means. I hate to sound political in my legal analysis, but I can't come up with another explanation for not wanting to send a child back home to their mother and father in Guatemala. I can't. And they admit, at least in some of the cases, if not most or all, that that's the case here, but they want to keep all of them in the United States.
Well, to most of us, Jay, it doesn't sound political. It sounds like common sense, but there are, of course, some exceptions on the federal bench. Jay Town, always great to see you. Take care. Happy Labor Day.
Thanks, John.
Well, coming up, Labor Day protest in some American cities. We'll talk about that when the record continues. Welcome back. There were a few protests this Labor Day. Some crowds gathered outside Trump Tower in Manhattan. They were protesting President Trump. People were seen marching around, carrying signs. Some were chanting, "Trump must go now." Everything appeared peaceful. However, there were no reports of arrests. Meanwhile, in Chicago, people were rallying against greed. Union leaders organized what they called the Workers Over Billionaires protest. Labor unions and students were seen marching, as you can see here. This evening, Senator Bernie Sanders is leading his own event in Maine, which is part of his Fighting the Oligarchy tour. 17.4 million people, that's how many passengers TSA expects to scan over this busy holiday weekend. AAA says domestic round-trip flights are 6% cheaper this year compared to last. What else is cheaper? Gas prices. The national average for a gallon of regular is $3.19. That's 14 cents less than it was 1 year ago. Newsmax's Christina Thompson spoke with some Americans about their end-of-summer travel plans.
Just doing a family gathering. I'm from Seattle, so we're going to a place called Bainbridge Island.
Are you worried about traffic or anything?
Not really. It's been pretty easy so far.
Heading home to Nashville. I'll be hanging around the pool with the family, celebrating our twins' 3rd birthday. I hope security at the airport heading back to Nashville isn't too bad, but we'll see.
What plans do you have going on for Labor Day?
We are attending a wedding on Roosevelt Island.
Well, we have a final. We're going to be estheticians, so that's what I will be doing.
So at least you won't be out on the roads. I know there's going to be a record number of people traveling, so you don't have to deal with that.
I don't have to deal with that. So in a way, good for me.
Actually, I will be on the road. I will be traveling to Pennsylvania.
Oh my gosh, are you worried about hitting traffic?
No, not really. We're leaving Saturday morning, so hopefully it's not going to be traffic.
Well, as you know, it's now September, which means many kids are going back to school in California. Legislation is taking effect, which has many schools limiting cell phones. Some districts are even testing out phone-free days. Newsmax correspondent Heather Myers reports from San Diego.
Here in San Diego, the San Diego Unified School District, one of the largest in the state, adopted a phone-free school day this school year. And it joins 35 other states that have guidelines or policies in place limiting or banning cell phone use at school. But how is this going so far? Well, here's one student's reaction.
In previous years at the school, people would be so locked onto their phones, and then when they were given work, they would all be like, "Oh, I have a question about this, that, or that." But if they just paid attention earlier, then that wouldn't have been an issue.
So why is this becoming so problematic? Well, a recent Pew Research Center survey found that 72% of high school and 33% of middle school teachers report cell phone distractions as a major problem. Common Sense Media found that 97% of students use their phones during the school day for a median of 43 minutes. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, more than half of public school leaders, 53%, feel that their students' academic performance has been negatively impacted by cell phone usage. And more than 2/3 feel that cell phones have a negative impact on their students' mental health and a negative impact on their attention spans. Here in the state of California, the Phone Free School Act goes into place in July of next year. So now it's up to each school district or even each school to come up with a phone-free policy. In some cases, the students' phones are locked away in a locker-type device all day. Other schools allow students to use their phones during passing periods or maybe lunch. One expert believes the phone should not be accessible for the entire school day.
That's the way to go. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, because if it's just left up to the teacher, the classroom, there's still going to be issues, especially with the older kids, of somehow they're getting access to it. And just, I think it's not, it's more challenging and it puts more pressure on the teacher.
One of the biggest pushbacks against this has been from parents concerned that they won't be able to reach their child during an emergency. Many of these schools have policies that if there is an emergency, they will allow the students to use their phones or give them back to them. But how quickly would they be able to disperse the phones if they have been locked up all day? And perhaps that's one of the reasons for this big debate. Reporting in San Diego, I'm Heather Myers. Back to you.
All right, Heather, thank you. Coming up, a popular children's character caught on the wrong side of the law. We'll tell you who it was when the record continues.
Chucky's a little bit busy, ma'am. Chucky, come with me, Chucky. Come on. Come with Chucky. Chucky, stop resisting. Stop resisting. You're being detained. Stop resisting. Let it go. Let it go. Do not cause a scene here, sir.
Well, this newly released body cam video of a Chuck E. Cheese mascot being arrested last month. Children and parents watched as police hauled away 41-year-old Jermel Jones out of the Chuck E. Cheese in Tallahassee, Florida. You probably thought this was Florida. It is. Police accused him of stealing and using someone else's credit card. The card belonged to a woman who hosted her son's birthday party there in June. Jones denies this, but police say they found the victim's credit card in his back pocket along with a receipt from one of the reported fraud charges. He was charged with credit card theft and fraud. Can't make this stuff up. Thanks for watching us. I'm John Bachman. Make sure you stay tuned to Newsmax. Rob Schmidt Tonight is up next, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
People think news just happens. It doesn't. It happens because there's someone there to capture the moment, to explain it and share it. That's my job. I go where news breaks and give you the facts. Join me for The Record on Newsmax.